Greetings. Welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing climate change, abrupt climate change, and things adjacent. As you can see, this is not my usual background. I did not make it home. I got to the airport this morning. My flight was canceled and set for the exact same time the very next day. So I am stuck in Detroit for 24 whole other hours. They gave me a hotel room for me to rest up in, so that's what I'm doing. But have a little bit of time, and I'm just trying to get a couple things done before I jump back into the home routine. So jump into it. I will. Thank you so much for your comments and discussion on yesterday's video. So let's jump into some very scary news. Headline: aircraft carrier sent to Middle East after indications Iran planned attack on U.S. forces. So this is not, these developments are not good. Of course, the United States is trying to spin regime change all over the place all of a sudden. Seems to be the thing to do. I don't know. Obviously, Trump is totally on board with all this stuff, but I don't know if he's, if it's the deep state, the powers that be, the ones with their hands on the levers of power that are like, well, guess what, buddy, you're beholden to us, and this is what we're going to do. But it seems like we're heading toward increased confrontations and not decreased confrontations, and not good. So I'm going to read a little bit of this article, and just, this is scary because it's not, I don't know what you would call this, but the reasons for this action or this escalated tension are completely bogus because it's just hearsay. So here we go. The United States deployed an aircraft carrier strike group and a bomber task force to the Middle East in response to clear indications Iran and Iranian proxies were planning an attack on U.S. forces in the region, U.S. officials said. Late Sunday night, the White House made the surprise announcement that the USS Abraham Lincoln and a bomber task force were being deployed in response to unspecified, troubling, and escalatory indications and warnings. So, we've been told things, we've heard things, some people have been talking about things, and so, we got to do things. That's basically what they're saying. So there's no clear evidence that anything happened or is happening. A statement from National Security Advisor John Bolton said the deployments were intended to send a clear and unmistakable message to the Iranian regime that any attack on the United States' interest or on those of our allies will be met with unrelenting force. Beautiful. The madmen are in control, and they are trying to put our fingers in all of the pies as quickly as possible. For what reason, I don't know. Clearly, it seems like things are teetering on the brink, climate-wise, economic-wise, internationally. Things are very wobbly. And unfortunately, it's a good time to be afraid. I'm going to move on. So there's a couple of good documentaries. This YouTube channel called VPRO Documentary has a series of really great items, and I'm just going to point out two which I think are interesting, and I'm going to link them below, and you guys can check these out. One is a documentary on ecocide, or the law around ecocide. So this is looking at yet another road of resistance, another way of bringing climate change to people's attention, another way of possibly taking a road to mitigation. Of course, we know, if we're going down a legal road, it's usually very time intensive, and time is one thing that we do not have. But I'm just going to play a very short clip of what the main protagonist in this video, her name is Paul Higgins, just says a very brief thing about ecocide, or the crime of ecocide. The title of the video is Why Earth Destruction is a Crime, and let's hear her.
I think there's a window of opportunity here that we can use to move forward here. We've got the climate negotiations here in Europe and Paris. There's a window of opportunity to say there is another way here. Climate negotiations, 21 years on, it's not working. There's something that there's another way possible here that can actually take us to a safer place. And ecocide law is that.
So she's saying that ecocide law, or enacting ecocide law, ecocide being a crime against a humanity or a crime against nature, is a way to move forward. So I'm not endorsing or putting all my belief in this possible scenario that this is going to help save the planet. I think it's, again, one of many tools in the tool basket as awareness around this issue grows. So I'm going to link this documentary. You can check it out, and you may find it interesting. You may not find it interesting. Personally, obviously ecocide, I think ecocide is a crime. I think ecocide is a thing. Obviously it should be, people should be held accountable, and people should be facing charges of ecocide, crimes against humanity, or crimes against nature, or crimes against the environment. Absolutely, that should be happening. We probably don't have time to go this route. We have very, very little time left, and however many years this route might take, I doubt it's going to be effective, but it's something that people are pursuing, and I applaud them for pursuing it. I'm going to move on to, many people have seen this video, many people have sent me this video, I've watched this video, it is a good video. I'm going to move on to this video from Paul. It's about Paul Kingsnorth, from the same YouTube site, VPRO documentary, and I'm going to play a little clip of what Paul Kingsnorth has to say. I really like pretty much everything Paul Kingsnorth has to say. He is incredibly astute on the subject of climate change, and he is one of the people that's moved to the point of, there's really, there's not a lot to be done other than to tend your own garden and try to live out the rest of our days in the best and the highest possible manner in which you can. That is his take on it, but I'm going to play a little clip from him, and I'm going to link this also below. If you have not seen it, it is quite good. I highly suggest.
When people talk about solutions to the ecological crisis, what they usually mean is we can find some technological way of not burning fossil fuels, or maybe we can invent a giant vacuum pump that will pull the CO2 back down out of the atmosphere. Maybe you can, probably not. It's worth saying that it is not possible at this moment in time to produce anything like the energy that the global economy produces without oil. But more than that, the question is, what's the problem you're solving? What do you think the problem is with this society that we've got to this point? I don't think it's a technological problem. I think it's a cultural problem, even a spiritual problem that we've got in our relationship with the rest of life, in our relationship with our own desire and our own greed and our notion of what we mean by progress, which is usually very narrowly defined. To me, there's a kind of spiritual emptiness at the heart of it. We don't really know what relationship we want to have with the earth. And you can, maybe you can fuel your capitalist growth society on solar power instead of oil, but you've still got the same problems in terms of the world that you're eating, the amount that you're consuming, the values that you have, the individualism, the kind of digital narcissism that we have as a culture. It's not a healthy culture we live in.
Good stuff from Paul Kingsnorth. So I'm going to link that below. Check that out. I could just let this whole video roll, but, you know, what's the point of that? Moving on, there's something I want to read before I read something from Roger Hallam. So here is a headline. This is from CBS News. More signs of apocalypse, saltwater fish extinction seen by 2048. The apocalypse has a new date, 2048. That's when the world's oceans will be empty of fish, predicts an international team of ecologists and economists. The cause? The disappearance of species due to overfishing, pollution, habitat loss, and climate change. The study by Boris Worm, I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, PhD, of Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, with colleagues in the UK, US, Sweden, and Panama, was an effort to understand what this loss of ocean species might mean to the world. The researchers analyzed several different kinds of data. Even to these ecology-minded scientists, the results were an unpleasant surprise. I was shocked and disturbed by how consistent these trends are, beyond anything we suspected, Worm says in a news release. This isn't predicted to happen. This is happening now. Study researcher Nicola Beaumont, PhD of the Plymouth Marine Laboratory, UK, says in a news release, if biodiversity continues to decline, the marine environment will not be able to sustain our way of life. Indeed, it may not be able to sustain our lives at all. Already, 29% of edible fish and seafood species have declined by 90%, a drop that means the collapse of these fisheries. But the issue isn't just having seafood on our plates. Ocean species filter toxins from the water, they protect shorelines, and they reduce the risks of algae blooms such as the red tide. So I'm going to link this below. You can check that article out. And lastly, I'm going to read, see, this was all the way over here where I didn't want it. I'm going to read a post from Roger Hallam, which was on his Facebook page. He is now running for European elections as an independent climate and ecological candidate. I'm not quite sure what the post he is running for is. I'm not clear on that. But apparently he's doing it as a political, you know, more political pressure, more awareness raising. And this is what he has to say about it. Climate and Ecological Emergency Independent Candidate Campaign Diary Post number 1. I thought I would do some posts on this campaign for people who may be interested. First of all, I must apologize for not doing a post to thank all the people who have got arrested over the past few weeks. I don't really have the words to express my appreciation. At least I don't have that question, which I'm sure many of us have had going around in our heads for the past decade. Why the fuck is nothing happening? Okay, so if you're reading this, I will probably be in a police cell, hopefully getting some time to do some reading. The point of this campaign is not especially to get votes in a largely irrelevant election to a largely irrelevant institution, but to use the platform of being a candidate to highlight a few of the more grotesque consequences of our corrupted democracy. First stop is London City Hall with the not unreasonable demand that Sadiq Khan declares a rebellion against central government on the basis that the London administration has now accepted that there is a climate emergency, refusing all administrative cooperation under the third runway until the third runway at Heathrow is cancelled would be a good start. Otherwise, he should resign. Of course, this is impossible, quote unquote, but as we are discovering, the impossible is starting to happen and has to happen. Otherwise, another impossible thing is going to happen. We are going to go extinct. And just to remind ourselves, yet again, what the climate emergency actually means, the Arctic ice is about to completely disappear in the summer. The carbon lag makes further temperature rises inevitable, whatever we do. Global dimming ensures that once we stop this carbon madness, we will face even more temperature increases due to the loss of sun blocking pollution in the atmosphere, and we have to factor in all of this before we deal with the fantasy mathematics of the Paris Agreement and the non-existent carbon budget. So to paraphrase Henry Thoreau, when a government plans to allow beyond terrible things to happen, the only place for any semi-decent person is behind bars, especially if you're standing for public office. and he gives details about where to, how to donate to this campaign, which I will put that link in the description box below. So Roger Hallam is a man on fire. He is absolutely leaning all the way forward as far as taking action. I mean, he's gone from doing talks on the climate emergency to being a founding member or forming Extinction Rebellion, and now he's seeking political office in order to raise awareness around this. Go, Roger, go, is all I have to say. And lastly, I'm going to read the latest Way Past What the Fuck article from Michael Campy. To stress or not to stress. A blanket disclaimer: the realization that anything we do from here to the end point will be ultimately futile should not be used as an excuse to sit idly by. Oh, you gotta hold on, you gotta hold on, take my hand. I'm standing right here, you gotta hold on. And that's a quote from Tom Waits. I work as a fitness instructor. In this line of work, I am often called upon to explain the nature of physical improvements. Physical improvement comes from stressing the system beyond its current capacity in order to stimulate change. For instance, if you were to take a 10-minute walk every day, that would force some adaptation. If, however, you never went beyond that 10-minute walk, your body would adapt, and then it would say, okay, got that, what's next? Without continued and sufficient increase in the workload, your body simply stops adapting. Likewise, in our society, absent a sufficient amount of stress, nothing will change. It is up to us to begin to force that change. Paul Street said in his article, "In the time of the orange pig, where are the millions who need to be in the streets every single day fighting this orange pig regime and the hideous, racist, sexist, and ecocidal class rule profit system that hatched it? Shocked, frightened, immobilized, depressed, divided, distracted, overworked, overextended, indentured, consumerized, traumatized, sick, inverted, browbeaten, jaundiced, propagandized, addicted, smartphoned, Facebooked, Twitterized, ex-urbanized, sedentarized, immobilized, fatalized, fantasized, incarcerated, felony-marked, branded, stigmatized, shamed, frightened, and last but not least, electoralized. Although there is truly nothing we can do in the long term, it seems as though sitting back and just letting the coming disaster wash over us is a little irresponsible. We are used to being in stasis, merely existing, but Sam Shepard said that he was the eternal enemy of terminal stasis. We are now, unless we are out fighting in terminal stasis. There will come a time when you are going to be asked to stand up for what is right. I get a little tired of the pacifists who continually preach nonviolence when violence is rained on us daily from the moneyed elite. We appear to have accepted that top-down violence is okay, but if asked to step up and meet it and fight to defeat it, we fall back on our nonviolent mantra. I was told by a client who had been raped that she did not believe in responding to violence with violence, as that would make her like the person who raped her. This confused me, as I could not see her becoming a violent rapist merely by the act of defending herself against a predator. The word violence is, in most peace-loving arenas, a bad word, and I believe it is important to understand that. As an example, if someone broke into your house, threatened your family, and destroyed your possessions, you would feel justified in doing whatever it took to stop them. That is exactly what has happened. Powerful people have broken into our house, the planet, threatened and even killed members of our family, all life on Earth, and are destroying at an ever-increasing rate those things we hold dear. Roy Scranton, in his book Learning to Die in the Anthropocene, said, the coal miners struggling for a democratic stake in production didn't just protest, share news stories, and post messages. They didn't just march. The African-American activists struggling for civil rights didn't just tweet hashtag campaigns. They didn't just hold meetings. They fought and bled and died for a world they believed in. I believe that through the medium of the internet, we have become a nation of messengers and hashtaggers and protest junkies, and as necessary, a part of the landscape. As these things are, they do not complete the picture. As these things are, they do not complete the picture. The picture will only be finished when we begin to physically take apart the system that is currently in place. If we want to build something new, we first have to know what we are going to build in its place, and then we have to tear down the obstacles that are standing in our way. The powerful depend on us being too occupied with the toys that they gave us to ever pose a serious threat to their control. They are right in that we enjoy the toys and sincerely believe that the owners will allow us a voice in what is happening. That is somewhat true, but mostly the toys just keep us busy while the rampant destruction continues apace, not to mention all the destruction it takes to make those toys. Jason Herthler, in his recent article, Death of the Art House Revolution, Can the Americanized West Ever Stage a Real Rebellion? I just read that article recently, and perhaps I'll bring it up on another show. Said, you don't have to deconstruct why we are often satisfied to place our faith in entertaining fictive solutions rather than engage in the tedious years of struggle repeatedly called for by the likes of Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn, who understood the grim realities of political transformation. The lined faces of lifetime activists serve as testaments to the cut and thrust of battle against the depredations of faceless multinationals and their ever-growing databases of information, through which struggles are diffused and disarmed. From mobile phones, from fiber lines, from five-eyed satellites, from wire lines, from surveillance cams innocuously hung from every string of traffic signals. But it is simply the scale of the job that keeps us from banging pots in the streets like Argentines before they threw the parasitical IMF from their country, or like Venezuelans rallying behind an embattled administration because it represents a movement whose colors they proudly wear. Or, of course, like the emergency-clad French who turn out in the public square week after week despite increasing repression. Are we fatally distracted, or is it our creature comforts that dissuade us? We as a nation have become soft and coddled. Our amusements and distractions are so ingrained that any type of active resistance is unthinkable. A protest here and there, signing a petition, supporting different groups is almost worse than doing nothing at all. I do not deny that protests being staged and raising awareness of the problem we face but with massive destruction that is being wreaked on the natural world, perhaps it is time to start taking a more proactive approach, at least trying to stop, if only for our redemption, what is happening. The fight must go on to the very end, which will be, according to all the markers, the very near future. Until then, make your power known. Force the people who would blithely continue to destroy our world to understand that, even though it will not ultimately help, we know who they are, and we know they are wrong. Another excellent piece from Michael Campy. That is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I really should, this time, be back in Los Angeles tomorrow. And perhaps I'll have another edition tomorrow night of Black Bear News. Until then, you can support the channel at the links below. And I will see you next time. Peace.